Welcome to May's live coaching call about how to stop addiction with expert Tommy Rosen. I am so excited to bring him on this call, and I was really overwhelmed by just how many questions we had from all of you. Obviously, this is a hot topic. Millions of people struggle with addiction across the globe. And it's something that with the right tools and guidance, it is overcomable. And some people think it's not, but Tommy Rosen is going to be sharing his story of how he came to do this work. And before I introduce him, I want to just quickly talk about the fact that Tommy Rosen is someone that I discovered in 2014 when I was searching best meditation teachers in the world. And he was definitely up on the top 5. And I reached out to him and I said, I'm opening up this meditation studio. I would absolutely love for you to teach here. And crickets. But I didn't stop there. I kept going for it. I'm like, I have got to meet this guy. And sure enough, I was able to meet him. And I'm so lucky because he's taught at the studio. He's available to all of you on the Unplug meditation app. And I'm really excited to be able to share his story and to be able to kind of answer all of your questions and share his tools and techniques. Now, addiction is not only alcohol and drugs. Addiction can be relationships, it can be technology, it can be so many different things. So we've all either experienced our own addiction, we've had a family member who's had addiction, we've had a friend of a friend with addiction, or someone. I don't think there's anybody on the planet who hasn't been touched by this topic. So Tommy Rosen, you can unmute. Welcome to the live coaching call. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Susie. I'm so delighted to be here. Delighted. And always exciting to speak with your audience in particular, a group of people who have turned to meditation to, get down to the nitty gritty and improve their lives and live an amazing life. And that's wonderful. And so thank you for having me.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, just to open up with, is, how did you come to this work? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yes. So I come to this work of recovering from addiction the natural way, which was to say that I really struggled in my life around addiction. Drug addiction, alcoholism. I got sober for the final time. I got sober just over almost 32 years ago now. So no drugs and alcohol. The world is a better place with me as a sober person. I can assure you of that. And so I've had an interesting look in my life at what it means to be stuck in addiction and what it means to recover from that. And then once having recovered from, say, the primary addictions of drugs and alcohol, there are 4 more. I call it the big 6 total. It's drugs, alcohol, food-based addictions, people-based addictions. So that's relationship disorders, codependency, sex addiction, these kinds of things. Money-based addictions like shopping, gambling, being in a sense of debt, being in a state of debt. I consider that to be an addiction as well. And then finally, technology. So those are the 6 areas where I'm seeing human beings get really caught up. And for some reason, I've had an experience with all of them. Like in my life, I don't know why I had this particular path in life, but I have really, really had to recover from just about all of it. Here's the good news. I learned so much. I learned so much about it that I became uniquely suited to be helpful to other people who have similar problems. So I've studied this for the last 32 years, and I've become an expert at helping people to overcome addiction and to thrive in their lives.
One of the things that a lot of people ask you, I'm sure, is, what are the best tools and techniques in general that, not only someone who's going through it can use, but someone who's, friends with somebody who's going through it can kind of share?
2 ways I want to answer that question. I want to be very succinct here for the audience today. Number 1, addiction is a disease of isolation. One of the tools we're always going to look to heal from any form of addiction is going to be coming into community. The power of community. That can be a community like a recovery community, like a 12-step program fellowship. It could be all the way to being a part of the Unplug community and tapping into the community element there, quite literally. It's a person going from a sense of being sort of alone with their feelings, alone with their experience, not really sure how to get out of this, but I don't want anyone to know what's really going on with me because I feel a sense of shame around this kind of stuff. That keeps us isolated. And so when we can come out of that isolation and start to share and start to connect, that's a really, really, really good thing. Are you able to hear me okay? Yes.
Yes. I'll make sure to keep an eye on the chat. We have Jelena too. Jelena, wave to everybody. She's going to be making sure all questions are answered in the chat, so you can just share.
So the first element of this is whenever anybody says, what do you got for me? Like, I really feel like I'm stuck. I'm like, well, let's get you around other people who were stuck the way you are, but who figured it out. And let's get into a community of people who are examples of victory, number one. Number two, if you can all go with me here a little bit on this intellectual journey. So addiction works upon a human being at the level of mind, body, and also spiritually, and also in terms of our relationship with time. Addiction really robs us of the present moment. Okay? So if addiction works on us in the mind, and everybody kind of gets that, I know what it's like to be put upon by negative thinking. I know what it's like to be at the mercy of difficult thoughts. We all kind of get that. Well, imagine that times 10 and all the time. That's addiction. Somebody living in that swirl of negativity and that swirl of craving and that swirl of trouble, and you feel like you're swimming upstream. All right. Addiction works on the physical body, affects the way our brain operates, affects our nervous system, affects our endocrine system, that's our hormonal system in the body, affects literally the tissues, and it affects our whole physical frame. And then it works on us on a spiritual level. Spirituality, we're just talking about our longing to love and be loved. Everybody has that. Our longing to belong and be connected. Everybody has that. These are spiritual ideas. Our longing to feel a sense of belonging and fulfillment in this life. Addiction robs us of all that. So, and it also, as I mentioned, it affects us at the level of time. So if you're going to ask me, what are the tools that I need to use to move out of addiction? I'm going to say you need to move the physical body. You need to find something that can calm your mind. Hello, unplug world. Hello. What can we use that helps the mind to calm itself? Meditation, breath work, yoga. Yes. Everything you get to access in the Unplug app. Amazing. We also need something that brings us back to our own heart so that we can connect and be in a loving situation, generally speaking, in life. And then we need to find the present moment. Again, another unplug for meditation. Okay. So our tools that we use are community, and then the movement of the body, the breath, healthy diet, healthy lifestyle, calming of the mind through meditation. This is how we train ourselves out of addiction.
Wow. I hope everybody's writing all this down. Someone was asking a question, is this going to be recorded? Yes, it'll be recorded. It's going to be in the Unplug app, and it also will be sent out right afterwards, so you don't have to worry about taking notes on every little thing. You can rewatch this. Tommy, we have so many questions, and I do want to go through them. However, I just want to ask you before we do that, is there anything that you feel, before we go through all the questions that people actually have, is important for people to know? Because we sent out an email telling people, how to get over addictions and tools to use. One of the things that I love is that you just said is about the victory, surrounding yourself with people who've had, success with getting over it, and you clearly have. Can you talk a little bit about your experience as a coach, because you're out there helping thousands of people? Just talk a little bit more about you before we go down the road.
Sure. Well, everything I talk about myself applies to anybody else. So what I'll say about myself, what I've learned is that in order for me to solve any problem, I have to be aware of the problem. So that means the first step is awareness. And not only do I need to be aware of it, so it could be a statement like, oh, I experience addiction. I'm experiencing an addiction. Or it could sound like, I feel like I'm stuck. I want to move forward, but I feel like I'm stuck where I am. Or, wow, I really don't want to do this behavior, but I don't seem to be able to stop myself. Okay, that's a really amazing thing to recognize. And no, you do not have to raise your hand then and say, I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a this, I'm a that. You just have to recognize, wow, I'm in a pattern, and this pattern is not serving me right now. First thing. So I need to know, I need to be aware. Second thing, once I'm aware of it, I have to understand that there is a solution, that there's never hopelessness. You should not despair. Nobody should ever despair. Yes, it's humbling to recognize I feel stuck in something. We all feel that sense of being humbled, but there is a solution. There is always a solution. And I love what my teacher always told me. There is a way through every block. There is a way through every block. That's not just like hearsay. That's a truth in the universe. If you're blocked, there's a way through it. You may not know it, but we'll find the way through it. Okay. How do we find the way? We need to find somebody, and we need to get good direction from them. We call these people teachers, therapists, guides, mentors, yoga teachers, meditation teachers, addiction recovery experts, sponsors, friends, family. We connect with someone who has experience around getting unstuck. That's where I come in as a coach. I would help somebody to start to realize their patterns and to start to try some different things to get somebody unstuck. It's an art and a science. There's not one way to do it. And that's part of the challenge, because so many different people show up in so many different ways. And we all need different things at different times. So what was appropriate for me when I first got sober 32 years ago has changed over the years. I've changed over the years. I'm now 50, I'm almost 56 years old. I was 30 something or 20 something when I first got sober. Sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm like, how did this happen? But here we are in a 56-year-old body. And lo and behold, I need different things now than I needed then. So I get good direction, and then it takes discipline or devotion to apply the direction that I've gotten in my life. I'll make it very specific for you. For someone to move out of a stuck behavior, some form of addiction, they simply need to begin to replace that behavior with something else. So the old saying is that nobody can just drop a habit. You have to exchange a better habit for an old habit in order to make incremental progress moving forward in your life. So what's a better habit? For example, for me, like let's say if I struggle with alcohol and I want to let go of that from my life, or I struggle with cannabis and I want to let go of that from my life. A better habit, a better behavior than me drinking or smoking pot would be to go to a meeting and connect with people to share really what's going on with me today and to hear what's going on with them today, to move me out of that stuckness and out of the mindset of I'm going to smoke pot today, I'm going to drink alcohol today. No, I'm going to sit and connect with other human beings in a really heartfelt way that changes and shifts my energy completely. So this is a little bit about the process of change and transformation that's necessary to begin to move a person out of a destructive pattern into a better way of being.
I love that. And I have to say, like, a lot of people talk about loneliness as being almost as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that that was a Surgeon General quote, by the way.
Yep.
And you mentioned that community is going to really help people get through addictive behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And some people feel so alone and they're in their house and they're looking at Instagram. It looks like everybody's having a great time, but they don't even know where to start with community.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you can go to a yoga studio. You can come to Unplug Meditation, which is also now a yoga studio and meditation. You can go to, a religious, church, temple, whatever that could be. What other suggestions do you have of communities that people can join? Because I also know that service is something that really kind of gets
the music
out of your own head.
So this is a really big question, this question about loneliness. And you quoted the Surgeon General, who just this week released a report naming loneliness and isolation as diseases unto themselves that lead to medical problems. And so this really underlines this problem with addiction and the mental health crisis that we're facing in our society today. If community is a piece of the answer, it's not just about being around other people. It's actually about being able to share and to receive, truthfully, what's actually going on with you or with another person. We all know what it's like. Perhaps we know what it's like to be lonely in a crowd, that we can be amongst people and still feel a sense of loneliness. So I want to come at it from this deeper perspective. And for anyone who's struggling, I want to ask you to go to the next level. I want to ask you to begin to find a community of people with whom you can share truthfully what's actually going on in your life. There's a lot to be said for 12-step fellowship. A lot to be said for that. These are people who have struggled, who have reached a bottom, and who are on the path of recovery. There's a lot to be said for Recovery 2.0, my organization, where we bring yoga and meditation and breath work into that process of community and that process of healing from addiction. There's a lot to be said for many, many other communities that specifically are there to help people to move out of these addictive patterns that we've been speaking about. And of course, there are churches and there are synagogues and there are mosques and there are religious and spiritual paths that people can follow. There are also communities that are interested in art, interested in music, interested in singing, interested in dancing, that are more focused on those things than the lifestyle of, smoking pot while you're doing those things or, getting high in some chemical way. There are communities of people that love to get high in a natural way. And I think the Unplug community is one of those communities. I sincerely do. And I know that our community is that way as well.
Mm-hmm. You were saying something yesterday when we had our pre-call about the fact that marijuana is legal now. And I don't remember what you exactly said, but I want to talk about that because one of the questions was, how do I get over my marijuana addiction?
Okay.
Like, how do you actually help someone else who you see has a marijuana addiction get over that?
Yeah. So if first of all, you recognize that you have that issue, maybe you've tried to stop smoking cannabis or using cannabis and you found that it's difficult, or when you run out of it, you find that you become very irritable and restless and you're just, you're on edge and you realize, wow, I might have become dependent on this thing. I'm dependent upon this thing to feel okay in my life. Now, some people might be okay with such a dependency, but some people are like, wow, I don't think I want to have that. I don't think I want to be dependent upon this substance to move through a day feeling comfortable. And I wonder what would happen in my life if I let go of it. Okay, so the answer to this question is for that group of people that are curious about that and having that experience. Cannabis is not right, not wrong. Cannabis is not good, not bad. All I can say is it's either, from the yoga perspective, it's either a food, it's a medicine, or it's a poison. It's one of these three things. It's definitely not a food. So now it's either a medicine or a poison. How can you tell the difference? I'll go out on a limb here and I'll say, if you're chronically using cannabis and it's bringing negative consequences into your life, it's turned into a poison for you. If you are in chemotherapy, if you have some of the medical conditions that cannabis can help you with, that's different. Maybe that can be a medicine for you. But somebody who has decided to go through their life using cannabis as the thing that helps them go through life, wow, it's going to bring about struggle for you because it's going to turn into a poison in the body and the mind. And now we're in that realm of addiction. So I'm just telling you these things because in telling you these things, you understand the problem in a deeper way. It will inspire you to stop and have a period of time off of it. For me personally, cannabis served a purpose for me when I was a younger man, when I was really a teenager. And then very quickly, it became the thing that I used to get through my life. It turned from something which temporarily could have been useful for me into something that was ultimately poisonous for me. And I ultimately had to let it go. Now, if we understood cannabis as a society at this level, and you understood that this is not something that you want to be doing regularly as the thing that you do, that if you are identified like, I am proud of my cannabis, I'm a pot smoker, yay, 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 it's worth an inquiry or a period of break to just see, what would I be like without this in my life? Is there a way I could bring my body and mind into balance where it's not dependent upon this substance to do it? And what might be waiting for me on the other side of this habit? Could I be healthier in my body? Could I find a way to be calmer in my mind and not be so irritable when I run out of cannabis? Is there a way I can develop as a human being so I could become better?
Thank you. So we have like so many different questions.
Can you
So
hear me?
I can, but your sound changed a little bit. Speak again. Now I can't hear you. You're muted. You could have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
now I can hear you perfectly. Okay. So I'm going to kind of go over the overview of some questions that people had because there were different categories, and I think you really handled the cannabis category really well. Another section that I didn't even think about as a addiction is relationship addiction. And that was something that we had a lot of questions on too. Can you give us an overriding statement on that as well?
I'd love to. A colleague of mine named Nikki Myers refers to codependency as the disease of the lost self. The disease of the lost self. And I believe, as she does, that this underlies our other addictive behaviors. That before I was ever using drugs and alcohol, I had this disease of the lost self. What does that mean? It means I'm out of touch with me. It means I'm out of integrity with me. It means I'm not acting authentically as me. Now, someone might say, how's that possible? I'll give you a very specific example. Imagine I want somebody's attention. Let's say it's I want the attention of a girl, or I want the attention of a friend or a parent, or I want someone's attention. And I figure out if I change my behavior and I act a certain kind of way, even if it's not in alignment with who I am and what my truth is, I can then get that person's approval, their attention. Then I'm going to start to change my behavior in that way over and over and over again. Now, I don't know when that day was in my childhood, but I figured this out pretty early. And I started to leave myself, leave my integrity, move away from my authenticity in exchange for doing what I thought would get someone else to pay attention to me or to approve of me. The minute I started doing that, I started reinforcing what later on was going to be a whopping case of the disease of the lost self. I could no longer really understand who I was or connect with myself because I had been so busy for so long in all of my interactions trying to please or get the attention of someone else. So I had left myself in favor of someone else. And this would follow me into my adult relationships, of course, because this is an entrainment. I'm training myself to be a certain way. Does that make sense to you?
Does. I was looking at the food section too as I was listening to you talk about that, because there were so many questions about food addiction.
Sure.
Does
that cover the relationship?
Yes.
I mean, it's just
does.
an example.
Unfortunately, I have to raise my hand as guilty that I've been guilty of that in the past, where I've kind of changed my way a little bit in order to
everybody.
I think we all do that. But I guess if you lose yourself to a certain degree where you're no longer authentic.
Yes. Let me just say one thing before we move on from this quickly. So many people experience difficulty in relationships. They find themselves repeating patterns in relationships or ending up with the same person if it's a romantic partnership we're talking about, or they even play out the same kinds of challenges in relationships with colleagues in business or with friends or family. There is a healing process from this, which is to return to our authentic self. And there's a perspective in yoga that I love to teach, which is the three relationships: relationship with self, relationship with other, and relationship with spirit, or whatever your word for that might be. When we fix the relationship with self and we become rooted in our true self, then we're able to really relate out in the world in a much more authentic and beautiful and loving way.
And I have to say, I believe that meditation is a great tool to use to connect with your authentic self. Maybe
so what I will say about that is that it's indispensable. I feel that meditation in this day and age is a personal responsibility. I actually think you need to do it, or you're being irresponsible if you really understood what you put out in the world is related to what's happening inside. We all want to put something positive out into the world. I believe that ultimately. And so it's the responsibility lays with us to deal with our insides so that our insides can express beautifully to the outsides. And so it's such an important thing. Earlier, you spoke about loneliness. Meditation ultimately leads to the end of loneliness. That can be counterintuitive because a person thinks, wait a minute, aren't I alone when I'm meditating? So there's a difference between aloneness and loneliness. And when you really get this and you start to understand this, when you learn how to be alone in a loving and comfortable way, your loneliness is gone. You no longer are dependent upon anything or anybody. You're comfortable to be here. And that's part of what we learn in our meditation practice.
Agreed. Okay, so I'm going to try to kind of merge a bunch of these questions together for food and eating. There's so many of them. There's the sugar addiction. There's the overeating at night addiction. There's the stopping your hand from going into the cookie jar addiction. There's the craving addiction. There's binge eating addiction. How do you survive the hungry ghost? I'm just going to keep going really quickly, and then we can kind of answer it in a general way. Yeah. Eating too quickly addiction. Angst after, how do you block angst to eat it even after dinner? Binge eating, drinking, and strategies to make healthier food choices and decreasing their Diet Coke habit. So just a few beautiful questions from a lot of people, but eating, it's something we have to do. So that's kind of a hard thing to address.
We sometimes refer to food addiction as a process addiction because of the fact that we're always in process with it. As you said, we can't not eat. So that means it's a little more complex and difficult than, say, giving up alcohol. You certainly don't need alcohol to survive, but you do need food to survive. And so that means you're going to have to develop a relationship with your food. So here are a couple of basic thoughts and guidelines that might be helpful to people who ask those questions. Number one, it's always a good idea to bring reverence, gratitude, appreciation into eating. That might mean for some people you say a little prayer of gratitude before you eat. That might mean you really treat your food as something sacred. And it has been, there's an old saying from yoga that says, if you teach children to be grateful for their food, they could never be spoiled. And one of the way that you teach children to be grateful is to take a pause before those first bites and say, it could sound as simple as this: thank you for this food. I'm so grateful. That's it. That immediately brings a certain pause, awareness, energy, prayerfulness, appreciation of the food that you eat. It changes the game. Of course, this doesn't just apply to children, it applies to everybody. So that's the first thing. Bring the sacred into your meal. Do something that makes this special. Realize how incredible it is that we get to eat at all. And that we, in California, I'm in Los Angeles, like we have 50 billion diets and 50 things. And I like to just bring it down to the fact of, wow, we get to eat it all. We're so lucky. We're so fortunate to have these choices. And we can never really realize that unless those choices were taken away. So we want to recognize that right up front. Second thing, nobody can tell anybody else what to eat. Nobody can tell anyone else what to eat. We have to have freedom around this. My teacher often told me, Tommy, you can't eat your way into heaven. And he would say, he said, I would much rather eat meat at every meal and be grateful than be a militant vegan and angry when I'm eating my food. And it says so much in that statement. So it's really about our attitude that we're bringing. Now, when we get out of control with food, there's always a story behind it. Always. Part of the way we get out of our struggle is to understand the story, bring compassion to it, understanding to it, and begin to create a new story. I'll give you a direct example. When I was a little boy and into my teenage years, I would go and see my grandmother. My grandmother smothered me with so much love, it would be impossible to express to you the way that she loved me. And when I was with her, I called her Nanny. When I was with Nanny, I said, Nanny, make me your spaghetti and meatballs. Make me your spaghetti and meatballs. And Nanny, smothering me with love, would always make her delicious spaghetti and meatballs. That became a story for me. And lo and behold, in my 50s, 50 years later, when I'm feeling like I'm missing something in life, if the sweetness from life goes away for a day, if I'm frustrated, angry, worried, anxious, I'm in the kitchen making pasta before I can even think about it. I wasn't even aware that I was making spaghetti. Why am I doing that? What's happening? Because there's a very powerful story underneath the food choices that we're all making. And for me, in that case, it's, I'm going to get love. I'm going to get Nanny's love here. I'll make this spaghetti, and somehow I'm going to be returned to a state of love, So what's important in that story is for people to realize we are under the influence of very powerful subconscious stories and forces that have an effect upon our choices in the kitchen and our behaviors. Why do we go after the chocolate cake, using that as a metaphor? Because at some point, that chocolate cake did something for us, brought about a certain kind of effect. We may not even remember the story, but it's there. So part of our healing, part of our recovery from food addiction is going to be a little bit of a process of uncovering some of the stories and some of the beliefs we have. If I eat this food, what do I think is going to happen? and beginning to bring that same awareness to this form of addiction as we would bring to any form of addiction. And then beginning to make incremental changes and to do little things. Now, I'll bring it down to the utterly practical. I'll give you a couple of things that you could do at home right now that will change your relationship with food immediately. Number one, figure out when you're going to go to bed tonight. Work backwards 2 hours. Finish your dinner 2 hours before you go to bed. Don't eat anything else for those 2 hours. You can drink water as much as you want. You could have some herbal tea, but no honey. Finish eating 2 hours before you go to bed. Do it as an experiment. You will go to bed on an empty stomach, which is fantastic for your sleep. And while you're sleeping, you're not supposed to be digesting anything. You will wake up in the morning. Your cravings will go down. Your sugar cravings will go down. Why? Because your insulin has had a chance to balance itself out. You got a great sleep. Your food was fully digested before you went to bed. You're going to wake up the next morning. And yeah, you go about your morning routine. For me, that's a tall glass of water with a little bit of lemon squeezed into it, because that cleanses the digestive tract. I get into my little morning meditation routine, my yoga routine. And then maybe I'm going to have my first meal. For me, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, maybe later. It depends on what you're doing, who you are. But I'm not in craving in the morning. When I eat food up to when I go to bed, I neither sleep well, nor do I digest my food well. My insulin sugar balance is a little off, and I wake up in the next morning, I'm a little bit groggy. I don't feel as energetic. I'm not thinking as clearly as I want to. And guess what? I'm in the frequency of addiction because my body is starting to crave sugar. And I don't want to be in that place. Try this 2 hours before you go to bed. An excellent, phenomenal practice to start to change your relationship with food. Of course, there's 100 other things we can get into, but that's a good beginning.
I love that. And also, for those of you who are looking, on the Unplug meditation app, there's an entire section about food and healthy eating. And we have a hypnosis for healthy eating. We have a great meditation by Sahara Rose where you look inside your picnic basket and you make substitutes. And as I was listening to your story, Tommy, I was thinking about my own trigger food, which, believe it or not, was a liverwurst sandwich from my father, Herb. And I'm like the only person in LA who eats liverwurst. So whenever I was needing comfort, I would order the liverwurst sandwich. And I realized that I needed to replace that with something else, like to show my father's love, my father who's not here. And I realized, like, I can just go antiquing because he loved to do that too. And that's not harmful to me. Liverwurst, I haven't had a sandwich since I had that awareness. So I really like how you say awareness is like your number one tool. But sometimes, just one last thing on the eating thing, your brain leaves your body. For the night eaters or for the post-work eaters who they've been healthy all day, then they come home and all of a sudden they just can't get it in quick enough. And it's almost like their brain left their body during that time. How do you pause in those moments of like where you have zero control?
Yeah.
Or you think you have zero control?
Right. Well, ultimately, you have to do something different. You have to adopt a different behavior. I'll give you another good example is if you're really feeling in that kind of sort of triggered appetite and you think to yourself, I'm about to hurt myself here, or I'm about to do something that I don't think is a good idea. You can always take a 10-minute walk, literally walk out of the house, go out for 10 minutes, take a break, drink some water, take a pause, and then see how you feel. Inevitably, you will find that you feel slightly different than you did. And you will have taken an action that was to your benefit, and that reinforces itself. I also have a number of breath practices that I like to engage in when I need to give myself a pause from a state of craving, if you will. I'm not thinking I'm going to use drugs or alcohol. That's gone for me for my life. But I might, eat something when I'm already full, or figure out like, this is not really going to be good for me. What's going on for me? I don't have to operate always at the mental level, but I can get down to the level of the body by starting a breath practice. And a lot of my breath practices are on the Unplug meditation app, and you can find them there. For calming yourself down and calming cravings, doing a breath practice for 3 minutes makes a tremendous, tremendous difference. And then finally, we go back to our original comment about community and the importance of communication. You might tell somebody that's right there and say, you know what? I really don't think I should eat this, but I'm like up in my head about something, and could we maybe talk it out together? And then you talk it out with a friend, and it's like, wow, I feel so much better. I really don't want to eat that now, and I'm actually not going to. So we have lots of tools at our disposal.
Love that. There's an entire section of questions here too about vaping. Teen vaping, adult teenager addiction to marijuana, vaping, and gaming. So help with quitting vaping. How can I motivate and help my daughter to keep her meditations consistent? Any tips to support her without enabling her when it comes to home treatment? I guess vaping and gambling. Let's bucket those two.
Vaping and gaming.
Yep, gaming.
Okay. Well, with regards to anything that you pull down into your lungs, so nicotine, cannabis, whether you're vaping or smoking or whatever the thing is, I'll take you through it like this. Number one, realize what you're doing. You are vaping, you are smoking because you want to get out of your head and down into your body. That there is a disconnection, that you are up in your head in some difficult thinking, negative thinking, anxious thinking, worried thinking, resentment type thinking, judgment type thinking, condemnation type thinking. And it's uncomfortable. We don't like to be there. Sometimes we'll say, oh, I feel bored. Well, boredom is never boredom. There's no such thing as boredom. Boredom is, I'm thinking thoughts that are uncomfortable for me and I want to think something else. Okay. We smoke. People smoke. They draw that smoke down into their lungs. It's literally an embodying practice. You fill your lungs with smoke and you hold it there. It brings about an effect. It changes your emotional state. It passes the time. Well, it doesn't pass the time so productively. We'd say that's an unproductive way to pass time. How else could we pass the time and still bring ourselves out of our head and into our heart? The answer, of course, is breath work. Breath work, exercise, cardiovascular movement, yoga, meditation with the breath. Incredible. So I tell anybody, if you're vaping and you want to stop, oh my God, do a minimum 3-minute breath of fire practice every single day. And whenever you're feeling the craving, do it again. And
Can you just show someone who doesn't know what that is, just a quickie example of what fire breath is?
Breath of fire is a panting breath in and out through the nose. It's really actually a little bit complicated, but I think I have that up on Unplug. But if I'm in and out through the nose, I draw my belly in on the exhale and release it on the inhale.
Yeah, you do have all those amazing different types of breath. In fact, I did one of yours this morning, the alternate nostril breathing. You have the movement breath. There's so many incredible breath meditations that you have on the app. Yep. So for anyone who's going through it, you actually have the tools in there.
Yes, and realize what we're trying to achieve here. Nobody likes to be caught in their head. And so we are using a technique which is good for the body, good for the mind, achieves the same thing without any negative effects, and it changes your emotional state, and it actually strengthens and promotes health, strengthens the body and promotes health, rather than taking a whole bunch of chemicals into your precious, beautiful pink lungs and hurts them. And we can't forget that when you're pulling. And so people are like, they vape and they're like, well, this is not as bad as. You never want to say about your lungs, I'm doing something that's not as bad as. You never want to say that. You want to say, I'm doing something amazing for these precious lungs. And what that is I'm building my lung capacity. I'm cleaning the mucous membranes of my lungs. I'm increasing my vitality. I'm building my immunity. I mean, good Lord, we all, as a global community, we all just came through a horrible virus that attacked us in the lungs. Can't we understand how important it is to build our lung strength and our lung health? If we can't understand that now, I mean, my goodness. So what I tell people who are vaping, get an alternative breath practice and stop pulling chemicals in and start breathing. And really learn these practices and bring them into your life every day. Your life will change for the better. It's incredible.
Gaming and gambling. We have so many different, and there's also shopping, but we're going to be answering them all, but we have 15 minutes. So
sure, no problem.
Gaming and gambling.
With regards to screens and gaming, gaming is like the far end, right? It's the extreme, the most extreme, only because of the quickness and the speed with which you're seeing things and you're engaged, and it's changing the way the brain operates. And there's constant dopamine, constant being fed. I don't want to sound dramatic. I don't. I just want to say that I don't think a lot of these kids are going to make it. I just don't think they're going to make it, because this brings up such severe dopamine imbalance, hormonal system imbalance. It's just sitting in front of a screen and watching things for 5, 10, 15, literally 15 hours a day. I mean, you're cut off from nature. You're cut off from your breath and body. You're in this fake world of just. I don't think folks are going to make it. I think they're going to face the most severe mental health issues, that stuff we haven't even seen yet. As we know today, addiction is on the rise, suicide is on the rise, mental health crisis. I mean, practically every day, I read about somebody else going into some unknown place and shooting a bunch of people. And this isn't coming from nowhere. And no, I can't blame it all on gaming and screens. But when you're gaming like that, and you're on a screen and on social media and scrolling, and there's the dopamine thing happening for you, it is changing things not for the better.
Well, how would you suggest someone move beyond that?
You have to stop. You have to stop. This has to stop. And what we're going to see more in the future, as soon as people get this message at the governmental level, is there going to be like digital detoxes that people are going to have to do. And I've been on some of those where kids are, their devices are taken away, and adults, by the way, same thing. And for the first sort of 3 to 5 days, they go through an irritability that rivals any detox that I've seen. It's unbelievable. But a week later, 10 days later, 2 weeks later, their life comes back. The light in their eyes turns back on. And all of a sudden, life isn't confined to these small screens. And it's so important that we take time. We have to break. And if you're gaming at that level and it's just like, I mean, this is very different than a meditation app where you're sitting there closing your eyes and being guided. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the inappropriate release of dopamine, primarily, the neurotransmitter, into the brain, which changes the way you think, behave, and feel over and over again, countless times in a day. No good. And we're going to have to break away from it. And so that's going to require things like treatment, going away for a while, and learning to reconnect with nature, reconnect with movement in the body, reconnect with food, and orient yourself a little bit to what's happening in this beautiful, incredible world we live in.
To me, unplugging is the ultimate luxury. And people think they need to be on their phones 24/7. But I try to unplug completely on Saturdays. Like, take my phone, leave it upstairs in my room, and just live. Because when you work, you're on your computer, you're on your phone. And then I find myself constantly wanting to see what's going on with my friends. And, I really need that 100% separation from my digital device.
Yes. And, Saturday's your chosen day, maybe on purpose because you come from that Jewish lineage, as do I. But, Sunday was the Christian day and Friday was the Muslim day, and we all had our holy day.
Yeah.
And there was wisdom to that you'd take a day off. Well, great idea. And we need that right about now. And people need a break, and they need a break regularly. So really important.
They also call it digital sunset. When you unplug you come home from work, you unplug and you just take that digital sunset.
Oh, thank God.
PM.
What a beautiful term.
Yep.
And while you're having,
I didn't make it up. I heard it from someone else, but I don't remember who I heard it from. But
while you're having your digital sunset, go out and see the real one. Mm-hmm. Do that. Very good.
That's great. Okay. Sobriety. How can you avoid relapsing when you do what are some ways to get back on track?
Yeah. So in the most simple of terms, you surround yourself with other people who are on the same path you are. So if you're a person in recovery, get to meetings. Make it just a part of your day. I spend an hour connecting with human beings in recovery every day. It's just a beautiful, wonderful thing to do. And it's so easy, and it's nice. It just feels good, It's a place that I can go to share, and it's a place that I can go to listen and learn. And it is without question, it's one of the ingredients of the recipe to stay sober and avoid relapse. Developing the capacity for truthfulness, being honest with yourself and with others is also a really powerful thing. They say that there's a direct connection between getting out of integrity with yourself and relapsing. So if we are engaged in behaviors that aren't okay with us, we need to work that out. We need to get back into a place of balance and a place of harmony. So community, meetings. At Recovery 2.0, we have 32 meetings a week online now on Zoom, open to anybody, anytime, anywhere for free. Independent meetings, we have men's meetings, women's meetings, we have book meetings, we have Spanish-speaking meetings, French meetings, everything. So people have the opportunity to get together and talk about what's really happening. And then, very important to have two things. One, you got to follow some kind of path, something you're reading, some kind of thing that guides you. So for some people in recovery, that's the 12 steps. For other people, it might be a religious or spiritual path. For other people, it might be some other thing that they're following that moves them further along. And the practice of meditation, as I said earlier, is a personal responsibility, especially when you're on this path. If you're in recovery and you're not meditating, I don't know how anybody makes it, truly, to deal with this. We call it the bad neighborhood. You don't want to go to the bad neighborhood, right? You want to stay in the good neighborhood, and that requires meditation.
I want to take a moment and just acknowledge all these amazing human beings. At one point, we had 105 people just on, and we now have our 93 that stayed on. That is huge for us. And I just want to say thank you for showing up for yourself. I hope that you found some wisdom here. I hope that you walk away with takeaways. And we're going to be saving this. It will be located on the Unplug app, so you can listen to it over and over again under talks. We will be resending it out to everyone so that you'll get a copy of it. And Tommy is available to help you with his platform, Recovery 2.0. He also is having a new program that's coming out about marijuana. So if you know anyone who's addicted to marijuana and needs help, this is going to be game-changing, life-changing. And I just want to say thank you to you, Tommy, for just all that you shared. I hope that we can do a post where we can go through the rest of these questions, because there were just so many. We didn't even talk about some of the things that I wanted to get to, which was just how to overcome the instant gratification of a shopping addiction. There was that whole thing. I'll give you my one tip, since I probably did have a shopping addiction. Never, ever, ever buy something after you try it on. Always do the walk away. So if you want it the next day, then great. But usually, I used to be like buying just everything, like, this is the greatest thing, I want it. No more. So just try to sleep on it. That's what I'd like to suggest, sleeping on your purchase, and it'll make you much richer. I can tell you from firsthand experience. Tommy, do you have anything else that you would like to add before we end this call? I know we have 4 minutes, and I just think this was amazing.
On a personal note, with anybody listening, don't despair. Don't despair. It's hard to be human. That's why we need things like Unplug, and that's why we need each other, and we need community. It's difficult sometimes. So don't despair. There is a way through every block. Reach out, don't be alone, and know that no matter how many times you've tried to quit something or to move beyond it, and you may have not had success to this point, try again. Try again and again and again and again until you get it. Don't ever give up. And, in the Recovery 2.0 membership, I'm there almost every Thursday night answering questions and you could just come and be a part of it. And there's so many people who are examples of victory that are waiting with open arms for you to show up. And so I'd just like to say, these communities like Unplug, like Recovery 2.0, are places where everybody wants everybody else to succeed. And that's a circle I really want to be a part of. And so there you go. And I have, Susie, I don't know if you know, but I have the our podcast is called the In the Circle podcast with Tommy Rosen, and it's just having unbelievable success. And I invite anybody to come check that out.
Well, thank you again so much, Tommy. This was so informative. I could have spent another 3 hours with you, and I would like to, but I have to respect everybody's time. Again, to all of you who showed up for this call, I want to say thank you for showing up. I believe we're all smarter because of it. I think we all have some tools that we can use and techniques. And you don't ever have to be alone, because Tommy is available to you 24/7 on the Unplugged Meditation app. And hopefully you've tried his meditations. If not, I highly recommend them. And I just want to wish everybody a beautiful day. And we're going to stay on a little bit longer, but we're going to end the recording. If anybody would like to come on camera and speak, feel free to just wave and say hi. We would love to see your faces.